Florida Congressman Corey Mills has formally filed articles of impeachment against President Joe Biden over his threat to withhold arms to Israel. The legislation consists of a single article citing abuse of presidential power. It reads in part, in violation of his oath to faithfully execute the office of president and to uphold the Constitution, President Biden abused the powers of his office by soliciting a quid pro quo with Israel while leveraging vital military aid for policy changes. This egregious action not only compromised the credibility of the United States, but also undermined the interest of our longstanding ally, Israel.
I'm not sure if Republicans in Congress know this, but they're supposed to be working, maybe creating a law or two for their constituents. But instead, they're looking for something else to baselessly impeach the president over since Comey's Hunter Biden search came up empty.
We are currently reviewing some near-term security assistance shipments in the context of unfolding events in Rafah. We haven't made any decisions. We did pause as we reevaluated some of the security assistance that we're providing. So we've been very clear, Senator, as you know, from the very beginning that that Israel shouldn't launch a major attack into Rafah without accounting for and protecting the civilians that are in that battle space. We've also been very clear about the steps that we'd like to see Israel take to account for and take care of those civilians before major combat takes place. We certainly would like to see no major combat take place in Rafah, but certainly our focus is on making sure that we protect the civilians.
So we are withholding our shipments of weapons predicated on the strategy that Israel's employing and going into Rafah. Is that the bottom line here?
We've not, again, we're assessing. We have not made any final decisions on this yet, but to answer your question, yes. There are some things that we're taking a closer look at.
The Secretary of Defense nervously delivered the news that the United States is considering a pause and giving Israel more weapons to kill even more innocent Palestinian people. Representative Mills, who filed the articles of impeachment, said Biden abused the powers of his office by soliciting a quid pro quo with Israel while leveraging vital military aid for policy changes. This egregious action compromised the credibility of the United States. So according to this guy, doing the bare minimum of trying to make sure Israel takes children into account and avoids killing even more innocent civilians is egregious. So according to this guy, the United States thinks that taking children and their families into account before dismantling their bodies is egregious. I didn't say it. He said it. And so did this guy.
Do you believe Iran really wants to kill all the Jews if they could? The Iranian regime, yeah. Do you believe Hamas is serious when they say we'll keep doing it over and over again? Do you agree that they will if they can?
I do. Hamas,
okay, right. Do you believe that Hezbollah is a terrorist organization also bent on the destruction of the Jewish state?
Hezbollah is a terrorist organization.
Okay, so Israel's been hit in the last few weeks by Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, dedicated to their destruction. And you're telling me you're going to tell them how to fight the war and what they can and can't use when everybody around them wants to kill all the Jews? And you're telling me that if we withhold weapons in this fight, the existential fight for the life of the Jewish state, it won't send the wrong signal? If we stop weapons necessary to destroy the enemies of the state of Israel at a time of great peril, we will pay a price. This is obscene. It is absurd. Give Israel what they need to fight the war they can't afford to lose.
Nothing gets Lindsey Graham more fired up than the suggestion that our country consider a pause in handing over more weapons capable of killing tens of thousands of people that don't look like him or practice the same religion as him. And according to him, the enemies of the state of Israel are innocent people that are being starved while bombs drop over their heads and into their homes. It would send the wrong signal if we didn't supply the bombs, he said. I didn't say it. He said it. They just leave out the part about the thousands of people that are being killed by not calling them human. It's how genocidal plans always get condoned, by stripping the humanity away from those being killed, while our officials play politics with it.
Congressman, on what grounds would you impeach President Biden?
Well, if you look at where we are, Stuart, I mean, President Biden is failing on so many different fronts. But if you look at Israel, You showed those quotes and tweets, what he said when he was a candidate, you know, and he sure was bold then, but he'd probably like to eat some of those words today, because what he's done to Israel, walking away from our strongest ally in the Middle East, is disgraceful. You've got Democrats even admitting that right now. Our main objective is to get Israel the support they need to show that we stand with our ally Israel, even if Joe Biden's walking away because he is now trying to appease the pro-Hamas wing of his party.
Is it a high crime and misdemeanor to walk away from a big ally?
Well, what we want to do is get
crime?
President Biden to actually go and deliver that aid.
Well, there it is. What we want to do is get Biden to go ahead and deliver that aid. No high crime or misdemeanor. We just use the threat of impeachment every other month to try to get our way because we lost some elections. They're acting like the former deity of the Republican Party, Ronald Reagan, didn't stop sending military aid to Israel over the rising aggression back when he was president. This is from 1981. President Reagan, tonight, indefinitely delayed shipment of U.S. F-16 fighter bombers to Israel in an effort to restrain what Secretary of State Alexander Haig called the escalating cycle of violence in the Middle East. The clear implication of Secretary of State Alexander Haig's statement was that it was recent Israeli actions, above all, last Friday's bombing of Beirut, that led to a presidential decision that until very recently had seemed to be going the other way. Growing U.S. apprehensive over last week's Israeli bombing of Beirut and today's commando attack on Lebanese territory appeared to have overcome Reagan's personal inclination to provide Israel with the warplanes. It gets worse. He did it again 2 years later. President Reagan said today that until Israel withdraws its forces from Lebanon, he will not permit the transfer of some 75 F-16 fighter jets that have been held up since last summer. Quote, "We are forbidden by law to release those planes," he said. He implied, but did not state explicitly, that Israel had violated the terms of an arms supply agreement with the United States, stating that American military equipment can be used only for defensive purposes. Still waiting on House Republicans to say, just like Ronald Reagan, Joe Biden is considering pausing aid to Israel over their actions as they kill more innocent civilians. Just like I'm waiting on them to give a damn that Donald Trump is offering deals with oil executives for some cash, since we're talking about quid pro quos.
Trump reportedly made a big promise to oil CEOs. What did he tell them?
This is according to the Washington Post. He said, give me $1 billion and I will cut Biden's emission rules and I'll lift the freeze on natural gas permits and other things.
What do you mean, give me $1 billion?
Fundraising.
To his campaign?
Fundraising. Yeah. I need your money and your support, and I'll do things that'll help you. He reportedly met with executives from the big companies, Exxon, Chevron, and some of the smaller players, too. I spoke with an oil man who did not attend the meeting at Mar-a-Lago. He said, look, I love Trump, but $1 billion is a big ask. It is not a deal. Because Trump said, I'll give you a deal. I'll do all these things if you can pony up the $1 billion.
Nothing says America first and populism like running out after a rally full of red hats to a meeting with oil barons to ask them for $1 billion in exchange for policies that hurt regular people and further enrich multimillionaires. While Joe Biden is meandering around and the GOP is calling him a slow-moving demon that you should both be petrified of and consider weak at the same time, their guy is literally controlling their legislative body.
And I just spoke with President Trump yesterday about this, and while he says now is not the time, I'm going to be listening to him, but he also said, and he said it in his statement publicly, that it may happen, that the time may come. So even though if I wanted to do it again this week, the Democrats have already stepped in and saved Johnson. But again, I'll reiterate this, Maria, and the most important thing everyone needs to know is the people want a Republican Party that will fight.
The President of the United States, the former president who wants to be the next president, said one of his plans is, he talked to Time Magazine, is to round up the 11 to 15 million illegals and then go through them and find out who belongs here and who doesn't. Would you support that?
Absolutely, and President Trump and I have talked about this at length, but the challenge we'll have is finding them, Brian.
Everyone speaks to Trump on a daily basis about kicking Johnson's ass out and about Johnson doing Trump's bidding every chance that he gets. Both of these puppets feel a sense of pride in admitting that he pulls their strings and they jump on command. They know they're auditioning to be in the group of mindless yes men and women that won't let him down the way the previous crop of enablers did when they said things like, "No, Donald, let's not execute someone that you're mad at."
But Alyssa Farah Griffin, who was Trump's communications director, posted yesterday and said that you were present at a moment when Trump suggested executing the person who leaked information that he went to the White House bunker when those George Floyd protests were happening outside the White House. Do you remember that?
I remember him being very mad about that. I actually don't remember him saying executing, but I wouldn't dispute it. You know, I mean, it doesn't sound. I mean, the president would lose his temper and say things like that. I doubt he would have actually carried it out. I don't, you know.
But he would say that on other occasions. You said
The
he would lose his
president,
temper.
you know, the president had I think people sometimes took him too literally, and you know, he would say things like similar to that in occasions to blow off steam. But I wouldn't take him literally every time he did it.
Why not?
Because at the end of the day, it wouldn't be carried out, and you could talk sense.
But just because it's not carried out and you could talk sense into him, doesn't that still mean that the threat is there?